Welcome to Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips, where we talk all things addictions, codependency, relationships, and the good, bad, and ugly in between. Hi, everybody. My name is Jess Phillips. I'm super grateful you're here. I'm a master's level clinician and a relationship and attachment trauma coach. I help freedom-seeking women regain their confidence, master their triggers, and communicate their needs so they can finally put an end to toxic relationships, low self-worth, feeling like an imposter, and become more authentic, trusting, and secure. I know exactly what it feels like to be spinning in circles, stuck in obsession, and living life with all or nothing thinking. After years of failed relationships, impulsive decisions, yo-yo dieting, and riding emotional roller coasters, I knew I needed to get to the root of my issues and that I couldn't go on like this any longer. And that's exactly why I created the 10-week Secure Self-Coaching Program. I was tired of wasting time and money on professionals that didn't understand me. And I knew that trying to fix my own problems with the same thinking that got me there wasn't going to help me get any closer to my goals. If this sounds like you, feel free to send me a message and we'll set up a free consultation call to see if my program is right for you. You can find the link to my website in the show notes. Now back to the show. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips. Super excited to be interviewing my friend, Samantha Kris, today. Samantha and I go way back, and we just reconnected a couple of weeks ago over a nice cup of coffee here in Lachine. And she's been up to some super cool things. So I'm very grateful you're taking the time to come and chat with me and my listeners about what you're doing and what you're up to. So please help me welcome Samantha.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. So we kind of laughed and joked and talked about this when we were having a coffee together, but we actually go like way back now.
Way back.
We're still 29, but it's been like, I don't know how that math happens. But yeah, we were joking about it. You and I first met both working at, I'm not sure, was I working there at the time? Both working at the treatment center, I think, Addington back in the day.
You hadn't started working there yet.
I wasn't there yet.
I was just finishing my internship.
Okay.
So I think you started working there just a little bit later, but that was 20 years ago. Can I say that? Are you going to bleep that out?
I'm going to censor it. I'm going to edit all of this. And it just like, I don't want to confuse people, because that would mean that we were both 9 years old and that just doesn't.
It's just this like honk swear word, like 20 years.
I'm actually, you know what? It was my birthday yesterday. I turned 39 and I'm actually really surprisingly okay with all of it, like.
Was it your birthday yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Jess, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is like a birthday episode. How exciting. This is actually my plan all along.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not going to talk about myself. We're just going to talk about your birthday. Yeah. It was my 39th birthday yesterday. And and I think 30 didn't hit me hard, but it was like, whoa, because 20s, I don't know about you, but 20s was just so like, I really felt like a kid in my 20s. Like I was really insecure and I was trying to figure myself out and I was trying to hustle. And then I hit 30 and I was like, God, what's this? But now, and I guess, I don't know, being a woman and all this fear instilled in me, like aging is bad. I'm thoroughly enjoying getting older.
You know what? It's interesting you say that. So when we met, I was 19. I was an addictions counselor at 19 years old. So my 20s, yes, I had fun, but I kind of felt like a grown-up in my 20s already. And now I'm tapping into this very playful energy. And I wouldn't say that I'm like in full Benjamin Button mode, like regressing, but I'm definitely having way more fun than I was in my 20s. And I'm experimenting more. I'm more curious about who I am and the things that genuinely bring me joy. So I think I'm actually having a lot more fun in my later 30s than I did in my 20s.
That's so interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah. And important. I've heard it both ways where a lot of people, I used to joke with an old roommate of mine and like she wasn't a partier at all. And she actually started partying at a much later age. And she's like, I wish I would have done this kind of earlier, and gotten this out of my system. So I think that's awesome because you're absolutely right. I think there's one major thing that we lose as we get older is we start to lose that like playfulness or imagination or just being
letting loose and having fun, whatever. And that doesn't need to look like obviously drinking or doing drugs. It's like, how can we be creative or just goofy and not care so much and not take things so seriously? That's so
So I
awesome.
look around, like, what fun things do I have? I've got like this very sparkly, bedazzled karaoke mic right in front of me. And then on the other side, I have this crochet kit, which I'm actually not interested in. I wanted to want to do it so bad. And I was like, this is going to be great for a rainy or snowy day. This will be so fun. I can't bring myself to want to do it. And I see his little fox face just staring at me like, bring me to life. And I just,
Yeah.
like, I haven't brought myself to crochet yet, but
Yeah.
it's on my list.
Yes. I'm not sure if anybody really wants to be crocheting, you know? It's like those adult coloring books. I remember I was super stressed out one year and I was like, okay, I'm going to get into these whole like Mandela adult things. I haven't
Yeah.
experienced that much anxiety in a long time. I had like 82 colorful pencils in front of me, and now I'm invested and I start doing all the like filling in all the small dots. The thing took me like
Yeah.
almost 5 hours to complete, and I'm like, I'm never doing that. That wasn't fun at all. I'm never doing that again.
We might be similar in this way. So I got really into paint by numbers over the
Mm,
pandemic, and so many people swear by it as this very creative, very zen activity. And it is, except I have this compulsion that I need to finish it in the same sitting that I started.
yes. Yes.
And so 5 hours later, and your back aches, and you're
Yep.
like, "This is not making me feel youthful. I feel like a grandma, and an angry one at that." But I have to say, if I were able to just kind of, like, break it out a little bit and
Yeah.
actually enjoy it in chunks, I think I'd have more fun with it.
Yes. They should all come with, like, personality tests at the end of it, you know? Like, how did you act during this enjoyable activity? And you're like, "Oh, I sucked the fun right out of it. It was terrible. It was terrible." That's amazing.
Yeah,
Good for
defeats
you.
the purpose.
Good for you. But we are here to talk about some of your more serious adventures and everything that you've been up to, even though I am very happy that you are having fun and living your best life. But you have
Thank
done
you.
some pretty big, scary, very cool things over the years. And it was so nice to catch up with you and hear all about it. And over the years, you've become an award winning speaker. I can't wait to hear more about that. Best selling author, a speaker coach, and a reinvention practitioner. So let's just break those down for everyone. That's a lot of stuff going on at one time. So tell us a little bit more about kind of where you're at currently with all of those.
Yeah, you know what? It is a lot going on. And I think I struggled a little bit with how they really fit under one umbrella or one roof, and how to package my service offerings and how to really bring myself to market and what kind of brand best suited not only who I am in the season of my life, but the value that I can deliver.
Mhm.
And I looked at reinvention coaching. So I work with people who are on the cusp or in the midst of a pretty significant change, who know that there's something that is misaligned, but either they can't quite tell what it is, or perhaps they really are able to identify what's out of alignment, but they don't know what to do about it.
Mm,
On the other hand, I also work with a lot of speakers to bring their message to the stage to amplify their impact through the audiences that they're, stepping in front of. And on the surface, I was like, these are kind of disparate service offerings, and I'm not sure exactly if they work together, if they have to work together. And it kind of came full circle for me recently in the last month or so. So this is kind of real time thinking. Forgive me if it's a bit raw,
mm,
but people who go through my reinvention coaching, it's a 12-week program, and it's really rooted in values, in understanding what our core values are and which of those values may be compromised, neglected, or violated. And that's
mm,
often where I see a lot of this disconnect happening, where they feel like something is out of whack and they can't quite tell.
mm,
In most cases, either we're showing up with these values and we are not getting them returned in the environments that we're in, or we're not showing up with these values because we haven't taken the time to think about how truly meaningful they are for us and how centered they can make us feel if only we take, the time to recalibrate.
mm,
And in that process, people realize, wow, I've actually got a heck of a story. Like,
mm,
I've lived
mm,
through something. I'm sitting on wisdom, on insight, on experience, or even expertise that would be really valuable to share with someone. And it's really common that I attract people who want to write a book, who want to get on
mm,
stage. And then on the flip side of my speakers, they are getting on stage talking about a reinvention, talking about a transformation, whether it's personal, whether it's their business. And so they are in fact very related. And it takes a conversation like this to really help kind of paint the picture and help
Mhm.
people see how they go hand in hand. But it's actually kind of intuitive in the people, that I attract and the people that I work with. And so now my task has been, packaging that in a way that makes sense. And that's kind of the next step of where I'm at. But really, how I've landed on it so far is that whether you are stuck in an outdated narrative, you are entering a new chapter of your story, or you're ready to bring that story to the stage, I can help.
Love that. Love that. That was a good little
Yeah.
package at the end. That was great. And I
I've been
can
workshopping it.
yeah, it's great. And I totally relate. I feel that's a very common issue that coaches, therapists, anybody in the helping profession can often struggle with and it's definitely not a bad thing, but how do you niche down, right? We hear that
Yeah.
so often. How do we niche down? How do we speak to one person instead of speaking to everybody? Where the ego will often tell you, oh no, if I only speak to one person, then I'm not going to be able to help X, Y, and Z. But it's really like becoming an expert in that craft. Because, what I've found along the way is that the way that you were describing the values exercise and things like that, it's the exact same thing when people come to me to work on codependency, anxious attachment, narcissistic abuse. I say, have you ever done a values exercise before? And they look at me like I have 12 heads. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting that it doesn't necessarily have to be, the outcome, that you have to be an expert in the outcome. It's really about everybody's so different, but oftentimes I find the blocks that are in the way are all the same, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
And what I find especially valuable about this kind of work and the people who are willing to step into that, we're not taught how to evaluate our values,
Mm-mm.
much less how to evaluate them over time. So maybe we did a value exercise, likely in a work context. And I think we start to take on the values of our family, of our culture, of our workplace, and this is normal. And it kind of shapes who we are, but we don't really have a framework to assess, if we take those things away, who are we and what matters to us at the end of the day? And then we've got major life events like, the birth of children or the loss of a job or the loss of a loved one or an illness. And these things will fundamentally change the way we see the world, we see ourselves, and we don't have the tools to necessarily understand, okay, how do I recalibrate? What
Mhm.
is my kind of guiding principle at this stage in my life? And that's the kind of stuff that whether I'm working on a script or I'm working on, reinvention coaching, that just like I lose sleep over this. I go to
Mm.
bed, this is the problem I want to solve, and I wake up so excited to tackle it because it matters, and I see the direct impact of people who are like brave enough to kind of step into that and figure out who they are at this stage.
So awesome. And you can really feel it. I felt it even when you and I were having coffee. You said something at one point, but you said it with such conviction. You were like, "Oh, like when is your book coming out or something?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Who the hell?" My first thought, right? Because I've always struggled deeply with this sense of it, like imposter syndrome, right? That only in my mid to later 30s is starting to go away. But my first thought when you said that is like, who am I to write a book? But the way you said it, and I didn't feel like you were just trying to like please me or just make conversation, like you truly meant it. And I was like, oh, I was like, Samantha sees something in me. Maybe I should write a book. It was very encouraging.
Well,
Yeah,
okay, so you probably are well more versed in this than I am. Have you heard of the Pygmalion effect?
I have not.
Okay. Oh, good. I'm not really either. So, anyone listening, do your own research. But
Yeah,
in my early
I
days
don't
of
even know
trying
how to
to
spell it.
understand, so I think it's Pygalion. It's something that I just heard of recently. And it's this notion of like your belief in high performers fuels them to perform better. And so it's
Mm,
about creating an environment where you actually see the potential, nurture that potential in someone so that they can, trust that there's something there to build upon, ultimately elevating their ability to perform higher than they would have otherwise. Again, worth doing your own research, but in my early understanding of this concept, I just heard it for the first time last week, but it was like it immediately kind of clicked because this is who I am, at the core is call it a skill, call it, gosh, I don't know, just, who I am. Maybe it's innately in me. but I see the potential in people, and not everyone, which isn't to say that not everyone has potential, but for those whom I see kind of the next big step kind of revealing itself, sometimes it's before they see it themselves. And I'm able to say that with such conviction because I've also, albeit from afar, seen you develop over the years. And I have kind of witnessed your story almost as a bystander, but really in awe of what you've been able to do with your life. I am a sucker for your content. There's not a single post that I've stumbled upon that I haven't been like, that's thought provoking. And I see myself wanting to read more of what you write. Why wouldn't I want you to write a book? Like, absolutely. I'm already, sign me up. I'm already in.
Oh, guys, my new manager, please meet Samantha Kris. Taking 5% of all proceeds going forward. Yeah, I love that. I love that theory. And it really, it makes me think too of one thing I've really learned over the years is I've already been doing a lot of the things, we were talking about this before we hit record, and it was like, I had this mindset of only when I get the degree, only when I get a certain amount of money, only when I get to be 10 years sober, and it was all of these just kind of like waiting, but it's not really about that. It's really like, who are you becoming along the way? And when you were talking about that theory, it's the same thing that we do in recovery, right? Somebody, if I have X amount of years sober, I fundamentally believe that somebody who comes in, doesn't matter how low of a bottom you're coming in with. I have watched people over the past almost 18 years completely transform their lives from the bottoms of bottoms of bottoms, right? So it's like, but without all of us there, I think it's one of the biggest reasons I haven't left recovery, even though my ego is like, oh, do you still need to go to meetings? Do you still need to do this? But if everybody else left, who would the cheerleaders be? Right. So they come in and we really believe like, hey, if you just don't drink or don't use today, just that alone, you keep doing that, putting that type of, energetic money in the bank, you're going to be okay. But if all of us are just kind of sitting there with our heads down, like, yeah, it gets a bit better, nobody would stay. So we need those kind of cheerleaders, and you very much are that.
That makes me happy. And it also makes me curious. There's a lot, I think it's just kind of the algorithm and the loop that I'm in, or the content that I consume. One of the most common themes, I would say, in my feed these days is, no one's coming to save you, and you've got to do it for yourself, and like have your own back, and a lot of kind of self-made stories. And which, you know what? Great. If that works for you, and if that's the mindset that gets you up every morning, no judgment. But I have yet to see like truly someone who is self-made. And I'm not saying that we need to go around thinking that we're saving people, but this notion that we have to, or that we will only get through on our own, it's not really landing with me. And I look around and like anything that I've been able to achieve, you mentioned a few accomplishments, like none of those things are possible without community, without support, without the cheerleaders, without the people who had the belief in me on the days that I didn't have it for myself. And so curious to get your opinion on that kind of, no one's coming to save you mindset, which, I could see both sides, but like I kind of want to know where you stand on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. I love when my guests turn it around and they start interviewing. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, I think I used to be that person because I grew up like that. I grew up in a very autonomous family, where they didn't share feelings or emotions. And if you had a problem, here's the solution, put your head down, be quiet about it, and go and solve it. And I think maybe for some areas that can be helpful, but it was never very helpful for me after a while, because all it got me was loneliness and a bigger ego because I didn't know how to be vulnerable.
Oh, that resonates.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really the kind of, because I wasn't taught to say, hey, because solutions are very simple, right? I would be out of a job if all of this was based on logic. We all know what we should be doing or how we should be getting healthier or like, right? It's not about any of that. It's about the stuckness and why do
Right.
we get stuck and why do some people stay in stuckness and why do some people not stay in stuckness? So it's really unpacking more of that. But I believe more in community today. I don't believe anybody's going to fly through my window and be like, Jess, you should wake up and go to the gym. That, you know what I mean? Like if we're talking motivation,
Challenge accepted.
right? Just wake up to a little gentle knock tomorrow, just super chipper Sam in the window. I'm like, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. But for things like motivation, I think only getting into action is going to create that snowball of motivation. And whether
Yeah.
you can get into that action alone or with somebody. But when it comes to when it comes to the deeper stuff, especially being an entrepreneur, I've never needed people more in my life.
Right.
When it
Yeah.
comes to recovery, when it comes to business ideas, when it comes to just a sense of loneliness, even though I'm working with people all day, right? I'm working from home. Everything started to change. So it's really about, and like sharing ideas too, and hearing other people's experiences. Cause I don't know about you, but if I'm not in a great place, if I'm off the beam, my mind can still
Mhm.
tell me some pretty wildly untrue, not very nice things.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no amount of
Oh, yeah.
self-starting in that moment. Actually, I had it on Saturday. I had a photo shoot and it was a tragedy. It was like I completely shut down, just felt so uncomfortable. I didn't like what I looked like on camera on the photos. And then my friend Michael came in about halfway through and he started dancing and singing and started saying all these things that I had done and these accomplishments. And I was like, yeah, Jess, that's what you're doing here. Like you're doing this for, and it's like I forgot what I was doing there for a second, and it took somebody else to be
Yeah.
able to get my headspace out of that. Everybody, there's a puppy on screen right now. His name is Ace. He's the cutest thing in the. Oh my God. Hi,
He
Ace.
wants to
Hey,
yes.
Ace. He's about 1/8 the size of Sullivan. He's very sweet. Yes, no, I agree. I don't think the whole nobody's going to come and save you. I don't even really like the language around it. It's that it goes back to that aggressive approach, which, I grew up with and I tried and it just didn't work. I think asking for help and being open is one of the most humble things that you can do.
I hear those words and I feel them in my soul, and yet still I have such a hard time with it.
Mm.
And I
Well,
know better,
that's why we're
and
here
it's
today.
just
This is actually an intervention and not a podcast recording. So
my family put this up to you, didn't they?
they're all behind screen right now. Yeah, it's hard. It's really
Yeah,
hard.
it is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. And what's interesting though, like every time I do it, which is uncommon, but in the moments that I can muster up the courage, I always feel better. I have no data to suggest that asking for help
Yeah.
is the wrong solution.
Yeah.
And still, and I think that speaks to my logical mind, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you've got the data to support this choice, and still, I don't know. I think I've just been at it for so long that it's going to take some flexing of that muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, there's a lot to say about who we're asking also. That really had to
Mm.
shift for me was the safe hands that it was landing in, which I'm very delicate with today. Whereas before I would ask a lot of people, a lot of different things and opinions and this and that and what they thought. And now I'm quite careful with it because when I'm able to be kind of clear and open and vulnerable, because sometimes the help might look like you just needing to talk out loud or roll ideas around or just have someone listen. But now, the language that I use with my support network, like I'll literally have friends, they'll say, is this one of those times where you just need me to listen or do you want feedback? And I was like, I love you. That's such a great response. I'm like, no, I need feedback. And then
Yeah.
we're all prepped, it's boundaried, but sometimes a lot of people can grow up asking for help from the wrong people and get very aggressive opinions, or it could be a lot of projection on the other person's end, and that's not comfortable either. So I think who we ask is also really important.
Yeah, it's excuse me, it's interesting. While I never really thought of it as safety, it's certainly a filter
Yeah,
that I have and a boundary that I've come to appreciate. And the people for whom I do feel comfortable asking for help, I certainly feel safe with.
that's good. That's good. It's my new
Hmm.
favorite word. I talk about safety all the time. All
Love
the
it.
time. I didn't realize how important it was. I never realized how unsafe I felt all the time. It was like I was wearing a bulletproof vest walking around life, just waiting to have some aggressive opinion or whatever. And now I'm like, no, I want to feel safe with the people around me. So, yeah. So I'm
Wow.
curious.
What a thought.
Yeah, yeah. How did you go from, like, what was the kind of transition moment? So when we first met, you were studying to be an addictions counselor. That was kind of the path. How did you go from that to moving into, well, first of all, you've done a TED Talk, correct? Which is like
Mhm.
amazing. So how did you go from that career path to moving into being a speaker coach, being a coach in general, authoring books, stuff like that?
Gosh, I don't know that we have enough time.
Yeah,
I'll
you
give
have,
you
you
kind
have
of the
9
cliff
minutes
notes.
to answer the question.
Oh gosh, it feels like a lifetime ago when
Mm,
we first met. And at that point, I had put all my eggs in that basket ever since I was little, which is, might sound a bit strange, but that was really the profession and the field that I saw myself in. And I thought that if I can make a difference in the lives of the people who were struggling with addiction, then I can have such a profound impact on the other end of that, where they are really able to step into a life that they're proud to live. And if I can, be a small part in of that chapter in their story, that it would be a very noble, very fulfilling life. And I realized once I was in it that I actually didn't have the skills to leave work at work.
mm,
And they prepared us quite a bit for, I would say, the theoretical knowledge, even the human interaction, like in how to empathize and how to create safe environments. I had that skill set, but I didn't have the ability at the age that I went into it, which, 19 years old is really, really young. And for someone who's able to do it, I mean, all the power to them. But
mhm,
I felt so heavy by the time that I got home at the end of the day, because I was incapable of separating myself from the stories that I was kind of being integrated in and that I really wanted to help support, and very quickly lost myself in that shuffle. I didn't know my place. I didn't know how to truly add value. I didn't know how to turn those emotions off, if I should be turning those emotions off. And I was looking for something really different to just kind of clear my head and thinking, okay, if not this, then what? And I was out for a drive with a friend who said, you're really into community. You love getting people together. You love decorating. Have you ever thought of event planning? And I hadn't given it a single thought before
mm,
that moment. I thought, you know what? What the heck do I have to lose? I'm going to email every event planner in the city. I'm going to offer to work for free for the summer to intern and to just see if this is something that I can do, because counseling and working with people and supporting them in that way was really all I had seen. I had blinders on and that was my only path forward. And when that felt compromised, that wasn't an option for me, I was like, okay, I need to explore who else I can be
mhm.
with the skills that I have. And sure enough, I loved event planning. I stayed in that for 4 years. I planned 40 weddings that first summer.
Wow.
And yeah, I loved it. And I was very creative. I got to work with people. I got to, support them, albeit in a very, very different
Mhm,
capacity, but still through a very important kind of life transition, which I
mhm,
found really interesting. They were crossing the threshold. Initially it was from, not being sober to being sober.
mhm,
And then it was from kind of being not married to married, or starting a
mhm,
family, taking that next step into next step forward in your life. And I was like, okay, well, feels very different, but there's a similarity that brings me peace, that I am still supporting someone through kind of moving from point A to point B. And that opened the door to a corporate events position. And at that point, I had addictions counselor and wedding planner on my resume and thought, well, hey, let's give this a shot. and maybe I could be good at this, and if not, then I've got other skills to fall back on, and then the rest was history. I kind of grew up in corporate for the next 10 or so years, working with tech companies, media companies, and was in a really privileged position to work very closely with leadership from early on in my career, and got a sense of, again, that kind of helping nature. I was just given the nature of my role, was able to solve or contribute to some organization-wide challenges and opportunities. And I thought, if I can do this with one executive team within an organization, what would that look like if I can work with multiple leaders, multiple organizations? So I started my consulting practice on the side, largely in change management and communications, which are skills that I had really honed over the years. And in that process, developed my goal setting methodology, which is what I wrote about in my book, and ultimately what was brought to the TEDx talk. And kind of started this path as like a thought leader, coach. I use the term expert lightly, but like I became kind of synonymous with goal setting, and someone who is a go-to for not only setting but really achieving stretch goals. And then I started, the TED Talk really catapulted my speaking career. And shortly after my TED Talk, which was in 18, I started coaching other TEDx speakers, ultimately led to, CEOs, athletes. I have a client who I love working with. He's just been inducted in the Speakers Hall of Fame. So I've got to work with some really, really cool people who are doing incredibly meaningful work. And again, it goes back to, I get to play a small part in their story, this chapter of their story that are, these people are changing the world in their own right. And that's kind of been the undercurrent, I suppose. So my path has taken a bit of a windy road, but that's always been the common denominator.
That's so awesome. And which,
Yeah.
in a nutshell, for yourself or anybody listening, makes you an expert. It's funny how it's funny how we have a hard time saying that, right? It's like, what is something that you do all day that you can guide people through, that you have practiced for X amount of years, right? Which makes us, yeah.
But it's funny, going back to what you said earlier of, I'll be happy when I get the degree, or I'll be happy when this latest certification that I got as a reinvention practitioner, it wasn't like my happiness depended on it, but I still felt as though I needed something to validate and to prove that these windy roads all led to something.
Yep.
Someone looking at my profile, it may look like, what the heck, like just pick a lane.
Yep.
And it felt that this particular certification was really at the intersection of design thinking, of change management, of coaching and consulting in a really unique way that actually gave me the confidence to step out more publicly in like what I'm doing now, because it's been largely under wraps, because I've had it's actually scaled quicker than I knew what to do with. And so part of it is just that I'm feeling a little bit behind, but a bigger part of it is that it kind of gave me the badge of, oh yeah, okay, this brings it all together in a way that resonates, in a way that feels good, that gives me, like I said, that confidence to step out with it. And so as much as I think there was some ego in going for that extra certification, and there was like a safety blanket, it served me really well, because I felt a little bit all over the place, and this brought it together in a way that's just like, okay, I could step out feeling really good about this now.
Yeah, I totally get it. I felt the exact same way before doing my master's degree. And it was like, I flip-flop for so long. Do I need this? Should I do it? Do I need it? Should I do it? And it was like deep down inside, and not in a cocky way, but I had had so much experience already working in the field that did it really teach me anything I didn't already know? Not really. But what did it teach me, right? Was consistency. I finish what I start. The internship that I received as a result of it, which now has linked me to another clinic here in Lachine, which I adore, and the people that I've met and the supervisors and what I've learned from them. So it all links to all of these different things. Does the piece of paper on the wall really do that much of a difference? Not really, but it's the door opener, and I think the door...
And I would add, I don't know if you feel this way, but so many decisions in my life have emerged from just this intuitive calling, where it's like, I don't really know why I need to do this or how it's going to contribute to the big picture. But once I have it set in my mind that I'm going to do it, good freaking luck convincing me otherwise. because it is a knowing.
Yeah.
And there was something about this and this path that I'm on where it's like, it's still kind of coming together in real time. And I don't really know where it's all going, but
Yeah.
I have full faith that that vision is going to emerge and reveal itself. This feeling has never steered me wrong. And so being able to lean into that, it's been pretty cool.
Love that. I was just saying that yesterday to somebody. I'm like, I've never heard anybody say my gut really led me in the wrong direction, really threw me
Right?
right off track. And it's like, no, 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 your thoughts, your mind, your ego, your will, all of these things. But if we really get quiet enough and we sit with that intuitive nudge, of course, there's circumstances. I mean, we all can't just do what we want all the time. And there's financial and life is difficult right now. And there's factors, but it's really about, and also too, like, it's interesting hearing you talk about it because there was a shift that I had to make in my mind where with the degrees or with the certifications or I was forgetting about all the knowledge that I already had until I started to talk about that because I'm assuming that when I started to blog about attachment styles and attachment trauma and codependency and things like that, because I'm fascinated by it, because I went through my own experience with it, because I read about it all the time, I assume that everybody else knows about it. So my ego will tell me, don't write about this. This is silly. People already know. And then I get responses like, holy cow, right? Or like boundaries or people pleasing. I talk about it all day. So
You need to write a book.
okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Actually, I do have a little mini book idea. So we'll talk about the mini book first. Yes.
Okay.
We'll talk about the mini book first. But
Yeah,
anyway.
I get it though. And it makes a lot of sense. You know what? Like 8 years later, I'm like, aren't you guys tired of hearing a goal setting? But not only are people falling upon it for the first time, but they are different versions of themselves
Yeah.
when they see it, when they hear it, when they engage with me. And what resonated 8 years ago doesn't resonate now, or it resonates in a different way, or they need to hear it again because they are different. They are a different person. Their goals are different. Their values are different. And so I can imagine much like the content that you're creating and you're talking about relationships and codependencies is like the way that you experience that in one relationship is going to be very different from the next.
Yeah.
And so having that refresher or having access to that information as you evolve is so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was first starting out, just like going fully on my own, I was terrified. I was terrified to post. I was terrified to do anything. And I had hired a business coach at the time. And he said something to me once and he said, what type of disservice do you think you're doing to other people by withholding what you have to say? And I was like personally offended. I was like, he's like, what if somebody could really use that or you could really help somebody with that? And again, I'm always thinking it from my perspective, but now it's much easier for me to go, say I wanted to get up on stage and speak. I would need somebody like yourself to, I don't know the first thing about putting together a framework for, you know what I mean? I can outline a therapy session or things like that, but this is a whole other field that like we need coaches. We need these people who are experts in that domain to lead us. So very cool. I'm very proud of you. You're doing some awesome stuff.
Oh, thank you.
I know we have to be mindful of time. With all the things that you're doing now, where are you really lighting up lately? Like what is your kind of your true vision right now, where you want to take this business and what you want to focus on in the future for 2025?
So it's early days, but when I think about scaling and I think about growth, it's not really growing a team. It's not really hiring employees or creating this big sellable brand, but rather creating opportunities for people to license my IP. So the way that I work with values, the way that I help kind of the personal reinvention process is rather unique. It's largely influenced by the certification that I did, but that was really focused on corporate. And so, what I've been able to do, and part of my thesis and my final defense was taking those corporate tools and flipping them inwards and kind of adapting them, tweaking them, reinventing them to serve a personal reinvention process. So, that's been really, really exciting. I want to be able to bring that to more people. And that doesn't mean employees, it means allowing people to learn the method and to bring it into their coaching practices, their organizations. And with that scaling, it affords me the time and the space and the energy to also continue focusing on speaker coaching, which is just really, really lighting me up right now. It all is, but when I see someone getting on stage, there's an immediate feedback loop between them and their audience. And so the impact is exponential and it's immediate. And that is something that is hard to come by and, is not accessible in many fields. And so to be able to work on refining someone's story and integrating their own values and their own reinvention journey, bringing that to the stage and empowering others to help think, act, or feel differently in real time, find me a better feeling. I'll wait.
All I kept thinking too is like, God, I love instant gratification. You know what I mean?
No shame.
Yeah.
But it's like, it does take time. It takes months of working with my speakers. It takes, it's not an easy process, but once you unlock something that is like, oh, this is your X factor, this is something that uniquely is yours and only your story can ignite in an audience, that is evergreen. That will continue to inspire people or to move them into action for decades upon decades. So yes, there is that instant gratification, absolutely, but there's also this legacy that is built through me, through them, through it is this ripple effect that knows no bounds, and that's what excites me most.
It's so awesome. And what I really love about you and what you're doing, and I feel like I have a pretty good eye for this, is that there's a lot of professionals out there. Like, we're living in the age of Instagram and TikTok and things like that. But I hear what people are saying often, but I don't necessarily feel what they're saying, right? And listening to you right now, it's not just like, oh, I want to start a business to make money, or oh, I want to grow this. You really sound like, you know what I mean? Like the authenticity is there, and that you care, and you care about the clients. Yeah. And I think that as long as we're doing that first, the rest, people are so worried. I work with so many people that are worried about money and this and scaling and blah, blah, blah. But it's really like, if you care and you want people to succeed, I find the rest, I'm not going to say it's easy, but I find the rest follows. It's not really has to be the focus. And I feel that from you a lot. So appreciate that.
Thanks. That means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if any of my listeners or your listeners, whoever listens to this podcast, want to find you or connect with you, or maybe just kind of read up a little bit more on what you're doing, what's the best way to do so?
LinkedIn, probably the best platform. Instagram being the second. I would say, I don't know when this is airing, but there's going to be a fun announcement in the next month or two that really helps bring a lot of what we spoke about today into focus. As I mentioned, I'm kind of undergoing a little bit of a rebrand and rethink about how things fit together. And I'm working on making that not only more clear, but more accessible in a really fun way. So stay tuned.
Love that. Love a good closing hook. Love a good closing hook. And your Instagram handle is Samantha Kris?
With the number 3.
Samantha Kris 3.
Samantha Kris 3.
Awesome. And I'll link everything in the show notes, website, LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to reach out, you can find all the information in the show notes. And now that I really know how busy you are, a double thank you for taking the time. I still want to have you back for a live podcast. Didn't work out this week, but we will definitely do a part 2 or perhaps a fun mini series. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on to the Living Out Loud podcast.
Thanks, Jess. It was great to be here. Yeah. See you guys soon.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening and supporting Living Out Loud. Be sure to tune in next week for another fun, juicy episode.